don't ever engage in any sexual activity that is not aligned with your own value system. Men are not wired that way. If he says it's taking too long, then I stop and say, okay, guys, you guys are like microwaves. Very often, not always, but very often, you press the button and it's like, zzz, let's go. For a woman, we're a little bit like, Mama, welcome to over those stoves. Like, you need to warm it up. It's actually more demeaning when we sit as girls and be like, oh, I am a 2-minute noodles, it's kateli. Meanwhile, a guy is sitting there thinking, ish, I don't even know how to help it. A lot of guys suffer from performance anxiety.
And it feels so good.
Welcome to another episode of Bedtime, the podcast where we talk all things sex and all things intimacy. I'm in bed with Dr. Zenda this evening and I'm looking forward to our chat. Dr. Zenda, welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for making the time because I've been meaning to ask just one question.
Yes.
Sifunda P. Not ngo, but ucansi.
That's a difficult one because the reality is we don't have enough credible material, particularly credible material that comes from or that is culturally aligned with who we are as South Africans. We're still considered a very conservative country. Whenever we think about sexual health, very often we're thinking about things like, how to prevent STIs, not falling pregnant and stuff. But when it comes to pleasure, there's very little that is spoken about. And I think it does come from the tabooness of growing up in a society that doesn't talk a lot about sex, a society that has very often also we've kind of given the pleasure part of it to the guys. And it's only literally now that I'm seeing more women really stepping up and saying, no, I want my things and I want it this way and that way. And then we start saying, well, so where do I learn? How do I buy toys? How do I speak to my partner? The conversations are definitely getting better. If I had to answer, the original question that you asked, ideally, we should be learning the basics at home. But now tell me, which parents are trying to teach their kids about sex? But those are the safe spaces. We are kind of like in that generation where we're like, let's try and do this right. But when you look at, for example, how we grew up and our parents, nobody spoke to us about. A lot of the time, girls are kind of whispering by themselves about their experiences. Guys in the corners, they're like, but the reality of it is we don't have. And then you get things like porn, which distort a lot of what people really experience in their sex lives. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah,
you're doing
thank you very much.
Amazing, a very bold topic, but a very necessary one.
Yeah. Thank you very much for recognizing that because it took me over a year to say yes to it, purely because I wasn't sure of the delivery because we are still very much a conservative country in some respects. And people, when you want to talk about this, they're like, my brand, how's this going to make me look like? And I guess in my head, it's like, okay, so your brand, doesn't have sex? Or like, is your brand having the sex that you don't want to talk? It's always about other, which I can respect, but we all have opinions, even though maybe you may not be sexually active, but you have how you feel. And we don't have those safe spaces because I don't want to tell other people that I actually don't know how to give a blowjob.
Yeah.
Where do I go to say that safely?
And who taught who?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So where do I go besides it? Me feeling like, one, I have to do it or try to avoid it so that I don't get it wrong or, whatever the situation is. But then I live my life a little bit unfulfilled because, one, I never learn and two, I never open myself up, to one, the pleasure that my partner could receive from that or the fact that I can start not knowing and eventually I shy a little. You understand?
And that's how, sex is literally like like a growing baby.
Yeah.
You'll get somebody, for example, who only starts being active in their 20s, 30s maybe. And they get so anxious about the fact that I feel like I'm delayed. And it's like, relax. Just like any baby, you have to learn. There's no such a thing that you kind of start today and tomorrow you're swinging on chandeliers type of thing. And I think also that is the perception we have, particularly when it comes to women. For the longest time, we are taught, close your legs, do not give it, do not give it up, do not give it up, do not give it up.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you get into some kind of a committed relationship, whether marriage or, a partnership, and suddenly you're supposed to know how to. And it's like, how? I do love, if you look culturally, you do get certain communities. I'm not sure how much now it's happening. You do get certain communities, like in Lesotho, you get where women actually get taught by other women what to do, how to. I think in the Zulu culture, there was something similar, but it's far and, few in between, and it doesn't necessarily translate to the Refilo who lives in, the big city. And I think because also of that stereotype, everybody's always trying to look clean about sex. Whether we're talking about frequency, how many times, it's like, well, if you want it every day, twice on Sunday, you are a freak. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
That's your appetite, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like you said, if you can't give a blowjob, it's almost like you can give the best blowjob, but you can't talk about the fact that you give the best blow, because then it's perceived a certain way. Same thing you were talking about in terms of people and brands. I've always said I got very lucky. I got very lucky because my work is fully immersed in the topic of sexual health, pleasure, and maybe we do have an unfair advantage because there's a credibility in having studied and learned. But the reality is people are not going to go and read the kind of books I read. Even when you go to like bookstores, you'll find like you do get sex books and, but they're not as practical, as I think we could be having. So we're getting there. We're warming up. We
are warming up. And for me, that's what made me gravitate towards your profile, because what you are doing is the re-education, given the climate under which our country is, where, it's very taboo. And it's as if, it's not the one thing we all do. It's so natural. And if you're not talking about it, that what kind of sex are you having? And if you're not satisfied,
funny you say that, actually.
You are not satisfied, but you can't tell the person you are not satisfied, so you continue having the bad sex.
Yeah.
And then that's your identity. I do it this way. No, nobody taught you that. We're gonna make the slate clean. And your work allows us the space to do that, to say, I heard Mara on what Dr. Zenda said, and when she puts it like that, now I recognize that there's a gap in what I know. And if I want to say, it's not even about, like, sometimes people say, uyabanda. There's no such thing.
There's no such a thing. If there is blood flowing through your veins, it cannot be.
Yeah.
And I think it's those stereotypes again, those myths that kind of make us cringe about talking about those kind of things. There's no such a thing. I can debate, but it also brings to the fore the, sort of like the next, we spoke about, parents or in their homes, we should be learning, being sensitive to the material that's out there, that it's credible, but also within relationships. Couples are struggling. You'll find that people who have been together for like years, and suddenly the woman breaks out and be like, I've never had an orgasm, I've faked them all. And I'm like, why? It's because I don't feel comfortable or safe enough to share this with my partner. Sometimes there is a bit of a power dynamic between the couple, in the sense that, I think guys should really be, girls are really nice about a lot of things when it comes to sex. If it wasn't that good, we probably will never say it, because we don't have the languaging as well, in terms of how do I say it in a way that still protects my partner's ego and self-esteem, without sabotaging or shortchanging myself for sex that is unfulfilling. I think that's probably the worst. And that's why perhaps even a lot of women would eventually be like, oh, it's like, oh, I'm not
Yes, and you're not
I'm not
dead.
bothered, or kind of thing. It's because if you haven't found your own groove, even outside of a relationship, if you haven't found your sex groove within yourself, it's very difficult to either teach your partner how to, or to be comfortable in talking about it, because it's like, hey,
I want this groove conversation. Where do I find my own groove? And I'll tell you my own feelings. I feel like time alone and time alone touching, whatever, fondling, looking, whatever. But it's so vilified. I hear people like, oh, and I'm like, that is like, you are just exploring you, that you own you.
Yeah.
It's like having a car and never sitting at the back or whatever. Like, how do you make sure everything works properly? And how do you, from a position of wanting to communicate this eventually without doing it? I mean, is there a way in which to explore without, obviously, offending your partner or, hurting anyone else?
Yeah. I think it starts even way back in the sense of there are so many women who have never even looked at their own vaginas or vulva and vagina, right? So I'm like, so when Anje upisana ngekeke kodwa awulazi nokuthi linjani and stuff, it does come from what we spoke about earlier on, in the sense of it was always kind of presented to us growing up as if it's like a gift you give to somebody and not a gift that belongs to you, right? Then once you get familiar and just comfortable with your own body, I think another thing that becomes important, I always say, don't ever engage in any sexual activity that is not aligned with your own value system. Now, there's a very big difference between what your own value system and the value system of the society or the community that you've grown up in. And again, a lot of us, we find ourselves in our, say, mid-20s, 30s, sometimes even in our 40s, kind of questioning, who actually taught me, or who told me that was right, or that was wrong, or this was comfortable, or that was uncomfortable. And you realize that you've kind of been managing your own sex life based on other people's blueprints and textbooks. And until you can shake that off and be like, what does Mpume want? What does Mpume, what does Refilwe want? How do you want to express yourself? And so you then start defining what are your own values around sex, so that you don't find yourself in uncomfortable. If you are uncomfortable with sexual pleasure, it's not for everyone. You'll find other things that you enjoy. If you are uncomfortable with sex toys, for example, the first question you ask is, why? Who made me feel uncomfortable about sex toys? What do they mean in my head? Because if it's about, oh no, saying young in the adult world, and it's like, there's so
somebody had to inform that.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to once you shake off, and I love when I see particularly women getting into that space of self-discovery, because for the first time, all of those things fall away and you really start then being curious about your own body. So how I would probably say, how do you even start self-pleasure? The biggest sex organ is the brain. It's what's in between. So if you are not connected, head, heart, and genitals, or vagina, vulva for women, or penis for men, if you are not connected in those three areas, women struggle a lot with it. So if you think it's wrong to self-pleasure, you'll kind of try it and be like, oh, maybe I should stop and stuff. So you're constantly...
That time, nobody's in the room.
Exactly. And again, back to what we spoke about, it takes time to get to know yourself. So start by looking. Then try out things like, for example, we think, when you think about sex toys, 8,000 nerves literally run the show on that clitoris, and it is purely for pleasure. Sometimes you might be like, my hands, my fingers are not so... but just look, touch, and feel like, find your own hot spots. Then you go into things like, let's experiment with a sex toy. And when we talk sex toys, people just imagine this big dildo. And it's like...
Because that's the original bad boy of sex toys. That thing you saw in the porn movie in the 90s.
For women?
I know.
It's not inside, it's on top.
Yes.
You know, it really is. So when even, I mean, the idea, even when you look at, for example, what we define as sex, because I am convinced at some point we need to get rid of this word called foreplay, because foreplay for us is the main meal, right? So if you're not having penetrative intercourse, it's assumed you're not having sex. Or you don't think...
I like that, because that's how people also cheat but don't cheat.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, asenzanga next bit.
You know, it's those things. And yet 90% of women, you know, research shows that 90% of women will have the most amazing orgasm, sexual pleasure from clitoral stimulation or a combination of and stuff. Then it gets to a point where like, okay, now I've figured that out for myself. Yeah. But how do I convince my partner? You know, if I say to my partner, Mfethu, today penetrative sex is off the table. We can do everything else. How do we connect at the level where all our senses get involved? You know, some couples are like, I know if we're playing 2 minutes nyana, and then it's like we're inside and it's like by the end of it you're not fulfilled. So it's all these layers of different things, which I think it's gonna take time, but I think we're doing a pretty good job. Look at you. We're doing a pretty good job in like destigmatizing what sex means. And again, it goes back to if you can shake off everything else that you have been taught or that has been given to as a blueprint and figure out you and then grow in that, explore within the comfortability of your personality, of what you like, and absolutely your own value system.
You know why that is key, ne? Because you sometimes find all that out inside a relationship.
Yeah.
And this one's appetite or inclination goes against what you know, but you love them and you want to be with them and you want them fulfilled.
Yeah.
But not by anybody else. So now you're finding yourself in this predicament to say, okay, by not doing it, there's an element of me denying them.
Yeah.
But it aligning is a problem.
Yeah.
But
where's the space in what you're saying for us to be able to communicate before, during, and after sex?
Yes. Because, when it's actually yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
and coming in as equals who may like very different things.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll often say to couples, when you've got a situation where, let's take something that a lot of people find taboo. Let's take anal sex. Your partner says, babe, and you feel cringy and you're like, instead of, very often our response is like, have a sit down and be like, tell me more about why you are curious about this. Yeah. Tell me more about why this is important to you. And then also get to a point where you're like, let me tell you why I am uncomfortable with it. Because sometimes it could be a value system thing, but sometimes it could be because I've never done it. Or
and I don't want to let you down.
Yeah, or I'm scared it's going to be painful. Or I've associated it with other stereotypes that are out there when it comes to, I mean, a lot of guys would never let you put something inside.
Meanwhile, it's one of the best ways to climax for them. But you can only tell them.
Guys are listening.
You can only tell them. You can never even think about suggesting it because they obviously associate it with other things.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not really, can we talk like without the thing, or this is how I'm going to be perceived. Yeah. You are human. The two people talking are both trying to get to a point where they are fulfilled, number one, and two, there's just wellness and health. Because I feel like the pent-up desire of, I want this anal sex, but lo muntu 10 years naye angikwazi nokumtshela, but You understand?
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, that's your story. You were the person that wanted it and never got it.
Yeah.
And resented your partner for it, and it shows up in other ways in relationships.
Yeah.
Because unfulfilled desires and whatever, they build up.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
also, as we morph, you get to know yourself. Now, in your 20s, you've got this blind confidence. You think you can conquer the world. And then you get to reality phase.
Yeah.
And then you settle. And then there's that 40 age. Like, I'm turning 39 right now. And I do not want to turn 40.
40
I think
is
that's
amazing.
Where, I think
turned
that's where I'm
40.
going to stick.
Yeah.
I have this in the back of my head. I told my husband, like, I have this TikTok account I'm going to open, and the handle is going to be, I do not want to turn 40. And yes, it's fine. I am sure it's amazing.
It's so amazing.
It's beautiful.
It is
I just don't want to.
It is so amazing. Something happens when you turn 40. I turned 40 this year, and something just
Doc, you are there.
clicks right, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
But to your point about not being able to communicate, and it's not just in the sexual space. People go emotionally unfulfilled because we don't know how to communicate. And this kind of opens a can of worms about the quality of our relationships.
When
there is the quality of our relationships based on our social media pages and how we walk around in front of other people.
There is that box.
Yeah, but it's very often different when people are in the confines of their own homes. If you are not friends with your partner, you're gonna struggle. Yeah. Because there's almost like the show that we are constantly putting up. This, put your best foot forward. It's like, my guy, can you kind of be okay with my not so great foot as well? Because that's how you then build a safe space that allows for the both of you to grow. When you get together, you're not meeting a perfect person. You're meeting an evolving human being. And one of the things, or one of the reasons why we end up lying or kind of putting up mask is because I am not sure if you have the capacity for the all of me, the not so great me, the growing me, the irritating me, the inexperienced me. And so I'm going to show you the good parts, but it gets tiring if all I can do is just show you that, and I'm never able to have in-depth conversations about whatever it is, and still feel like you're not being judged, and it doesn't take away from the value of who you are and who you are becoming. We get so fixated in who you meet. We think that's the person I'm gonna die with, and I'm like, no. Even if you stay with the same partner for 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, that person is not the same as they were even just a day ago. And if we can open up with a lot of kindness and grace and just like, let's laugh about it.
For me, it's that. It's that place where even you are not perfect.
Yeah.
You understand? So where do you get off telling me, why we're trying to that thing, it's for loose women, or because there is something about obviously your sexual expression that I feel as though you could enjoy more things if you opened your mind to it. But you said it's something about opening. Unless you're vulnerable, you will not be able to reach the highest order of your sex life.
Yeah. And here's the real deal. We are afraid of being alone. We are afraid of losing credibility or supposed our values with people that we are with. And hence, it's very fear-based. Even the comment you're making about, say a partner is like, why you want to do this? A lot of guys shy away from using, for example, sex toys. And they think, no, sex toys is for the ladies. And
or these ones that are not adequate.
Yeah, yes. And it's like, no, actually, if you just allowed yourself, first of all, to be able to say, Angaz, I don't know. Can I find out more information about it? Can we learn a bit more about it before I decide whether it's something that I'm willing to participate in? And then the second part is, you can't expect to get it right the first time. There was one quote that said something along the lines, to be like a gourmet chef, you have to cook a whole lot before you get to that point. Sex is exactly the same. You have to try out a lot of things, or a lot of times with your partner, sometimes you kind of hit a jackpot. You're like, baby,
Yeah,
see,
that's what
their
it is.
position, you know,
Yes, facts.
and be able to, even when you're like, this one is not working,
Yeah,
you know.
and also to have a lightheartedness about it, because for me it's the fun element.
Yeah.
You understand? And if you've been with somebody for a long time, that, because life sort of like does things to it, the exploring in the bedroom is how you can get it back.
Yeah.
Because that's where back labantwana laba esihlangana nabo manje mina nawe dala sikudla. It was just me and you all this time.
Yeah.
So now those strangers are not there. Now we are in our own space. Like, let's have adult kind of fun, but the playful nature of sex sometimes leaves the room. I don't know why, because there's the tension. You're like, there's this expectation. Am I gonna meet her expectations tonight? And then the other one maybe doesn't feel like it. It's like, oh, hey, you know, it's been a week. Maybe let me try to just, you know, pretend like I'm here. And for me, the danger in that is that there's so much other goodness tied to you, the two of you being together, that you can use the exploration of sex as a glue. Yeah. But you guys, because you're not talking, it's now becoming a crack.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, in relationships, it's you know, I always say the omelet is only as good as the eggs that go into it. If one of you is not doing the work, whether it's just the self and the internal work, it becomes an issue, because then you are not growing whilst the other person is growing. Then you are not evolving whilst the other person is evolving. And a lot of fear-based things kind of trip the person who's not trying to. Because a lot of what you're talking about as well has to do with your own individual confidence. If I am confident in who I am and secure and content with me, I did something really crazy when I turned 40. I started learning salsa and kizomba. And you know, the hardest thing about learning something new as an adult is you've kind of had success and are sort of like an expert at different things. And now you must kind of condition yourself to be like an intern in something else. Let the
control go.
Yeah, let the control go. And you have to be comfortable with that element of being the duality of being an expert and a beginner in certain parts of your life. If you can live like that all of your life, I'm like 2 months in and I'm like, yo, this kizomba thing. And for me, it kind of tied in so well, even with the work that I do. I'm like, the way that you touch, the way that couples lead each other, it is such a prototype of what our relationships should be like. Because there's a sense of control you have to let go to be able to get the steps right, to be able to feel the music, to be able to... Sex is exactly the same. You know, if you're uptight, if you're hanging on to stereotypes and how it should be.
Wait, doctor, like...
And the dirtier, the better.
You understand?
Let it go.
Yes.
Let go of the control. But that only comes from a person who is constantly doing their own internal work in making sure that they are whole. Two whole people come into a relationship and you said it well. That's how you then find that connection. You are connecting with another whole human being.
It seems to be a running theme, the self-awareness, self-work. I've had a few people on this podcast actually tell me about that's where the key for true intimacy lies. Knowing the self. Yeah. Because you can deliver her or him in their vulnerable state, knowing I may have gotten the acts of service right. I may have gotten, you know, the checking up on you and the care and the catering to you, but maybe I don't have the, you know, exploration in the bedroom right. So I'm both good and still a beginner in this relationship. And because this is such a safe space, I would like to try. Yeah. You know, I would like to, like the thing you're saying about the whole session of no penetration. Yeah. You know, because that, like, because that's what intimacy is. But, you know, just for people, because maybe in that sexologist. It's a talk that there is a distinction between what intimacy represents and that sex is one of the ways in which people can get intimate. Like, just maybe you can take it clinical, or you can take it just simply for people to know that there is a distinction.
Yeah.
I've assumed we are all on the same page until I started communicating with different people. Like, if we're not calling it sex, I didn't say that. You know?
100%. And the way I usually teach, or, when, as I say, first of all, what is sex? Because if you say to me sex is penetration, then we've missed a huge part,
levels.
a huge part of what sex is. And also the fact that sex is not, it's a spectrum. It's not one event. It's a spectrum. And it can go from, if you think of all your senses and kind of engaging all your senses, it's the touch, it's the feel, it's the temperatures, and everybody. I think that, again, back to what we're talking about, when you start defining and figuring out what sex is for you, or sexual intimacy is for you, for some people it's we want to cuddle. Some people, we just want to walk around naked and play. Sometimes we want to pleasure each other without anything going inside anything. So again, it's throw away the book rule and say with your person, we are creating our own. I'm going to come fully as myself. You will come fully as yourself. This is not a performance.
Blank canvas.
It's just the two of us. It's not a performance. Let's find our feet. And I think then, even from a clinical perspective, somebody once asked, so what is virginity? What is virginity? Does it mean a hymen is intact? And I'm like, so what happens to the people who are having anal sex to avoid breaking the hymen for whatever reasons? Are they virgins or are they not? What happens?
Can't wait to talk about virginity.
What happens about if it's sex in between the thighs?
Yes.
If it's just we didn't go inside anything, but we were just naked and just touching and kissing, is that sex? Is it not? Right? So your definition of sex has to come from the self, not defined by other people, based on what you love, what you enjoy, what you like, what you're curious about, what you'd like to try out, provided that it's consensual with the person you are with, provided that it is safe for yourself and for the person that you're with. I think for me, those are the key elements. And I think probably the top third one is that it's aligned with who you are.
That alignment is important because you're going to want to stay there, and it's going to want to anchor you and give you the boundaries for self. Because what happens in relationships is that there's the ownership of ubuntu, right? And the assumed consent. Because so why wouldn't she want to sleep with me? I mean, that doesn't make sense. But I know the conversations for that has began, and it's so beautiful. Like now the words I'm hearing from people who are self-aware, for me, it's empowering, right? But there's this thing that I can't shake off when talking to couples, and my little experience, Nyana, working in the relationship sphere, is that sex by itself, when two people are in the bed, the guy is going to show up more confident than the girl. Not always, of course, but their experience is worn like a badge. Like I've conquered my woman, I know how to go down on her, I know whatever. Mara, the girl can't even dare talk about the fact that she's got experience. And maybe hers comes from one relationship for a long time. But she can't come there and talk about her experience. She can't place her experience anywhere in that bedroom.
Oh, no.
Why? Why, Mar? Why do we do that?
It's our society. It goes back to what we spoke about, how we've been socialized and how pleasure, you get in some countries where women get mutilated, genital mutilation, like the very thing that was built and only built for pleasure gets mutilated, because it's almost like this dismissive thing about that when we show up in the bedroom, we are equals, different, but we are equals. And what I like is just as important. And so, we spoke about the whole thing about we get taught close your legs, and then you get into a relationship like swing on chandeliers. It's like,
where's the disconnect?
type of thing. And even what's even more disheartening that we're hearing more and more is guys having this thing of like, oh, angifuni virgin, it's like, so you wanted the wife or the girl who's never slept with somebody. In the eyes of people, it's like an ego thing. But when you get to the bedroom, you're not willing to teach, you are impatient, or you want your own way. Guys have such a beautiful opportunity. And I think it goes both ways, but particularly because guys have kind of had a bit more of that permissiveness when it comes to sexual
they've been
pleasure.
Let to do things way before.
You have such an amazing opportunity with your partner to hold their hand and say, I'm going to be your safe space. I know you may be inexperienced, or if you are, I am willing to learn. I'm not going to take my memos from Utogo no Cindy no Beauty and say, I'm going to come and experiment on you. You are a filwe. And when I come to you and you are my person, you are a clean slate. And I am invested in learning you, not coming to try out the tricks and trades that I've learned from outside, because that's also where the disconnect comes in.
Yes.
So it's, again, more and more, I can see we are having the conversations and slowly and stuff. I mean, this one guy once said, so I said to the so on a scale of 1 to 10, how is his foreplay game? And first of all, the girl was like, maybe a 3. And I said to her, that in actual fact is a 1. You're just being nice by giving him a 3. And I said, why? And then I asked the guy, my guy, on your side, it's like, yo, man, my hand gets tired after 2 minutes. And I'm like, see, for me, that was, and that's why I love the work I do. It's an opportunity to educate, because if he doesn't understand that is the sole mother of all, glories when it comes to orgasms for women, then he will constantly dismiss it, because men are not wired that way. If he says it's taking too long, then I stop and say, okay, guys, you guys are like microwaves. Very often, not always, but very often, you press the button and it's like, zzz, let's go. For a woman, we're a little bit like, welcome to over those stoves. Like, you need to warm it up. If you get to understand that we are wired differently, there is something that actually flicks the switch in a man's mind. And that's his ability to give you pleasure. And I think sometimes where as women we are shortchanging the guys is we're not telling them the truth when something is, and it's not even got to do with them and their performance. It's more to do with, that's not quite my thing.
Yes.
A guy who's used to girls maybe who are sensitive on their breast. Stop it. Someone else said it was nice when you go harder, faster. And you're like, it's painful. Can we slow down? Can we re-educate? The vagina is very sensitive. Think of a girl who kind of comes with their teeth on your, in your glands. You're like, So it is with us. We don't give guys honest feedback or constructive feedback. So we'd rather fake orgasms and then go to our girlfriends and talk badly about the experience, or explain or express the experience with our girlfriends. And yet umuntu oyana embedeni nangula uzophinda ngasame thing kusasa.
That's what I'm saying.
So
you live
it's
long,
like,
unfulfilled,
You gotta get to the point of honesty with yourself. Bring a lot of kindness and grace for the next person. Protect their self as well. But be honest, baby. And it's also okay. Once you've expressed yourself honestly and somebody just either doesn't want to learn or is, then you got to go back to the drawing board and say, how important is this to me and for me? And am I willing to stay in a space like this? And then it kind of comes back to what we were talking about. A lot of people are afraid of being alone, of walking out if things that are important to them are not being fulfilled. So we walk around grumpy, bitter, talking badly. And the day you get the confidence or the braveness to either walk out of the relationship or speak about it, it comes out
from a
vile,
deep, dark place.
And now we've hurt each other.
And
then we take, so if we don't come back, we then carry it into the next relationship. Now we are scared. Now we are, and so we carry this trauma, hurt, and it happens both ways. You know, sometimes when guys are not willing to be vulnerable and they just come with that macho and stuff, it's very often because something or somewhere they were hurt. Guys are emotional too. Guys feel, and sometimes as women we can be very dismissive of. A lot of women are afraid of guys who are vulnerable, are afraid of guys who can cry, are afraid of guys who can be like, I'm not well. We both play on each other when it comes to gender roles, which honestly should have fallen away a long time ago.
We are the ones that continue to perpetuate, even though we bash them. I love that you are calling us out. I mean, I've spoken before on this very podcast about we've got a level of toxicity as a female species that we rarely own up to.
We don't like.
And we are like, okay. He used me for sex. He was a narcissist.
Where were you when he was using you for...
You understand. And the self-awareness part of, talking about this and you saying, like now you've mentioned about society and the preserving of a male ego is also ingrained in us. I don't want him to know that he's sort of failing. Because I've been raised to preserve his honor, raise him up and whatever. Ne? And I look at him and he's beautiful. But now I must tell him about this weakness. No. Of course we mustn't lie. I must find a way.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be slow in my getting him there. Because I know there is this fragility around. I need him to still believe he is. That thing that attracted me, which is I'm in control. But also... I need the vulnerable side of him to give me the honesty that, I actually don't like sex toys because perhaps when I was 5, somebody used it on me. You understand? Or you are. So it's that level of vulnerability I'm more willing to live with and never have the sex toy than live with not knowing or somebody say, why am I not enough? You understand?
Yeah.
So it's the inner part of the person that I really will value.
But that's
if that's the reason, give me that.
But that's where the intimacy part comes in, because when you're saying, if you're not winning at home, guys, it actually really doesn't matter how much you're winning out there. And sometimes we are so attached to abantu bazothini, right? But the reality of it, when it comes to particularly sexual intimacy, that doesn't even have to go anywhere outside.
See too. Yeah.
If there is a way, there is a way that you... I actually don't even believe guys are so invested in us protecting their ego. Guys want respect. Can you respect me whilst you're talking about that?
Okay.
Can you respect me whilst you're raising your concerns about? You get guys, for example, who've got early ejaculation. You know how it's actually more demeaning when we sit as girls and be like, "Yo, I am a 2-minute noodles, it's kateli." Meanwhile, a guy is sitting there thinking, "Ish, I don't even know how to help it." A lot of guys suffer from performance anxiety. If they see a hot girl who is doing well for themselves, like Refile, they're like, like I know. They get into the space and boo, pansy. Either they don't, because of anxiety.
And they can't explain it, maybe because they haven't gotten themselves in check to say, okay, let's get the medical part out so I can be able to still have a fulfilling life while I live with this.
But if we also as women are not educated about performance anxiety, about early ejaculation, about, there's a concept I call it's on the house. Girls have this thing of like, and then one day, gizomupa. But now the guy has been like hanging on for like 3, 4, 5 days. And you
and
expect
everything is like
literally as soon as you just take off your clothes, he's like, it's over. As soon as he is inside, he and then you are also the first one to be like, so qedile.
And then
so I always teach girls, if you have kind of had, this is your person, you guys are tied. If you haven't had sex for more than a week and you're now coming to engage, please have the it's on the house rule, which means the first one, baby, it's on the house. And then he kind of warms up and it's like, okay, now let's go to the second one. Other things that we really are, and it's a lot to do with a misconception or a miseducation. A guy will, let's say he finishes first. And then he's like, yo, baby, as and you're sitting there like, are you serious? Really? Yeah. Or maybe he doesn't want to like really pass out. He's just like, hey, baby, give me like an hour so that... Oh, boy,
But how you react...
is the So it's on the house is really big, and women, we need to use that. And then for that, after, there's a refractory period that men experience that we don't have. And the older they are, the longer that refractory period. And I always say to the girls, don't be nasty, man. Just be like, baby, it's okay. Your hands and tongue work just fine. Let's go. Right? You are now giving your person room, first of all, to relax and be themselves and not feel like it's a performance and they're supposed to be impressing you. You're saying, this is us. There are different ways that we can dance. Or grab your toy and be like, baby, bambala, I see it. So he gets to, and you'll find in a safe, respectful manner, guys are totally okay with those kind of things. And that's actually how you build your person's confidence in the sex space. Not ngokuthi hey ngimshayela uzibani or that's fluff.
Nice. I love that because it's very practical.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought, I've been listening to Dr. Zenda for a while now and I wanted to just keep on talking.
We need to go home.
You know why? Because when, I didn't expect to have a clinical conversation because obviously I've listened to it a few times. And doing this, I was like, I don't want people to get there and hear medical terms because it's going to be a disconnect.
Yeah.
So what attracted me to you is that we want to put it the way I would hope our partners would listen to us. Because if the doctor said it, then I could wrong, because that's the other thing. So you will be like, and then like, but doctor said, because they follow those orders like a T. You're like, oh no, I went to the doctor, and so that authoritative thing you have helps relay the message for a lot of women, because even explaining that for me, I don't climax through penetrative sex, can also be heard as his sex is not enough, or whatever he's bringing is not enough.
Which is not true.
So you want to get to a place like, no, this thing, it's not medical, it's not you, it's not me because my mind being outside, it's not that. It's the fact that we are different.
We are wired so differently.
Yeah.
One of my favorite analogies, whenever I do couples counseling and therapy, I say, think of your partner as, in fact, I say, maybe let's do that. What's your favorite car? Like your dream car. What's your favorite dream car?
Oh, if I tell you this, my husband will kill me, but
it's okay.
It's a Mercedes, classically serious, nothing fancy.
Yeah, and for me, it's, believe it or not, it's the Jeep Wrangler, 4-door, red, the beast, and stuff. Yeah. Now, your own car, think of your partner as your car. Your car takes either diesel or petrol, one of the two. Do you drink petrol or diesel? No. But for your car to do for you, take you from point A to point B, tangi. And what do you like drinking? Favorite drink?
Me, sparkles. Anything that bubbles.
Anything that sparkles. You're not going to put bubbles inside your car.
No.
Izo jam.
Yes.
Right?
But I also love that. Yes.
So you drink bubbles, but on your car, you pour diesel or petrol, whatever your car spec. and both you and your car are happy. Always think of your partner as a car, in the sense that my partner and I may not necessarily like the same thing. We may not have the same sexual taste buds, but there is a middle ground in me trying to understand what makes them tick. Because when you do that, and don't wait and say, I'm going to wait until he serves me or until she serves me. It's like, when you rock up in a relationship, come in as whole to serve and to love and to learn about the next person. It's not your party and less party for the next person. You are coming to build on something amazing. So when you are invested in, what does my person like and how can I get as close as possible to being that? And for particularly for women, I always say, okay, so when I uti 3-4 times a month, you're gonna give it up in a long-standing relationship. Okay, that's his petrol, or we always think it's their petrol and not ours. And I'm like, now imagine if your partner came home and say, baby, going forward, let's go 50-50 value. So I am only going to be emotionally available to you 4 to 5 times a month. Every other time, you're just like one of the guys. How would that land on us? Because we want our petrol. Oh, cuddle me, call me baby, chocolate. Hey, sex begins in the morning. And I'm like, Marisia Ninjana.
Yes.
Why
Yes.
Yeah, you don't have to be hungry for you to eat. Serve. Cook,
Yes.
and stuff. And it's not it's just about pleasing the next person.
Yeah.
It is, we are wired differently. We desire different things. And, when, I don't know, what was that? I think it was, what was Destiny's Child? Cater to you, right? And if there's reciprocity, that is the goal. In the catering.
Yes.
And not catering what you think he wants, or him catering what he thinks she wants. Baby, what would you like? What tickles your fancy and stuff? And then saying, I am going to do my best. If it's the blowjobs you like, if I'm inexperienced, teach me. Show me. I'll grow in it, especially if it doesn't offend me in any way, right? If, baby, you like me in lingerie, it's okay. You don't even have to be the one buying it. It's like, oh, I'm like,
yeah.
How about you just come home and, because that's another one, initiating sex. We don't like initiating sex as women. And reciprocity for me, as we kind of get closer to the end of this conversation, if you are not whole, if you don't understand reciprocity in a relationship, and if you are not able to live in the duality of being, Superman and Ken Clark at the same time, the expert and the intern, you're gonna struggle a lot, and you're gonna hit a lot of, roadblocks in expressing yourself.
And unsustainable. This notion that you've got to be good. Perfect. Or on point all the time.
And everything.
That is where I don't know if ill health is a word, but that's where a lot of things go wrong in terms of our wellness, because there is some expectation you to cut and paste it and whatever from different parts, and we are wanting to live through it. And I guess that is you reaffirming that relationship with the self is an overarching necessity in a fulfilling, sex life and intimate wellness, if you will, with your partner, or people that you're exploring with, because we're not obviously discounting the fact that the sex is also being had outside of relationships. A lot of sex is being had outside of the relationship.
Probably a lot more outside of than
true. I've enjoyed and learned so much. I've learned so much. I know this is where I'm gonna start to watch, because for me as well, there were nuggets there about just the respect element, because you always think about respect, and then you always think about also the ego, so you're thinking, okay, perhaps you can have those conversations, keep the respect intact, and and they won't autocorrect. they've got to hear from you as well.
Yes.
And that takes you taking responsibility for your own pleasure as well.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
if you're a funa, what lengths are you going to?
What
What lengths are you going to get to get it?
Mm.
Thank you very much for honoring.
Oh, man, this was
me.
beautiful. This was cozy.
And like I'm
And,
so
yeah.
like grateful that you did make it, because I know this was necessary, and it's only the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many more to come.
In bed with Dr. Zenda, and that is how we're going to wrap it up. Thank you.
And it feels so good.